Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be trying two of the new Victoria Beckham eyewear palettes. I picked up two. I picked up the olive shade and the Victoria shade. So we're going to swatch them, talk about them, and do two different makeup looks, one with each palette. So that is today's video. I will also use a lot of Victoria Beckham products on my face as well, since I do own quite a few of them. If you are new here, my name is Blair. I do all kinds of beauty content here on my channel, and I would love for you to subscribe. But let's go ahead and get into the palettes. All right, let's go ahead and open these palettes up and see what they look like. So we'll start with Victoria. This is, I guess you could say, the most neutral looking one of the four that she released. So these do come separately. So the little palette comes separate from the insert. So these are refillable. The refill on its own is $50. With the palette, they're $75. So these are very expensive. Not huge shock based on the price point of most of the products from Victoria Beckham. So this is Victoria. I will say this one in person, which is Victoria, does look slightly deeper just in general than it did online. But I do like the colors. I think it's actually a pretty unique color story, not something totally out of the box, but not just straight basic like you've seen it 1,000 times. But it definitely does look a little bit deeper in person. This is the palette. So it looks like the original eye brick palette, however, it is chunkier, it's thicker. So this is one of her original ones, and this is the new compact. So you can see the new one is definitely thicker than the previous one. I'm sad to say, I'm pretty sure she discontinued the original eye bricks because these are no longer on the website. And I loved this one. This is the signature palette. This is the only one that I had of the original eye bricks. But oh my goodness, I really love this palette. I'm sad that they don't make this one anymore. But the packaging looks similar overall. The new one is a little bit chunkier. I will say this one feels a little bit more like heavy. They're both heavy, but this one feels even heavier, the newer one. So they're magnetic and they just pop in there, and they do have the mirror that comes with it. Yeah, this is definitely feels much heftier to me than the original one. I want to also point out that I think they did fix a really significant issue with the first eye brick palettes with these. So this one, when you open it and you close it, the snap is like very, very hard, like very loud, very sturdy. Like it definitely snaps closed. Whereas the original palette, so this is the original signature palette, when you close it, it closes, but I don't know if you'll be able to see because of the mirroring here, but it leaves like this opening here. It doesn't close all the way. If I put my fingernail in there, it'll open back up. It's like the closure just wasn't closing all the way on these original ones. So it does appear that they have fixed that, which they should for the price. But other than that, not a huge difference in terms of packaging. And then the second one that I purchased is Olive, which is the olive green one. I love greens, so I knew I wanted this one as well. So this one is Olive. I will say this one looks pretty true to how it looks online to me. So I do think this one's pretty true to the photos. Victoria is just slightly deeper than I was thinking it was going to be, but very, very pretty. So there is the compact and Olive. All right, let's go ahead and swatch these quickly. So we'll do Victoria first. So Victoria has 3 mattes and a metallic. The Olive has 2 mattes and 2 metallics in it. I didn't pick up the other 2 because those just, neither of them seem like color stories I would use. The blue one, pretty, but not something that I really see myself using it all. And then the more black, gray, smoky one, I think that one's called Night Flash. Again, just not something that I think I would use. Yeah, so this palette is definitely deeper than I was thinking it was gonna be. Swatches are pretty though. Okay, so this one is Victoria. So we've got this nice kind of warm brown. This is a metallic, I would say like a gray, like a graphite color. This one here. This is kind of a slate gray, and then this shade is really beautiful. This is a plum, like a cooler plum matte up there, but very nice. The swatches feel really good. The mattes feel very creamy and definitely pigmented, I would say. This seems a bit more pigmented than the signature palette that I have from the iBricks that they don't make anymore. These mattes do seem a slightly more pigmented than that. And the signature palette I had did not have a metallic in it, so I can't really comment on that. This feels a little bit different, or actually a lot different from her lid lusters that come in the little pots. I know this one, I've seen a few people saying compares to Mink from her in the lid luster. I unfortunately don't own Mink, so I can't show that to you, but I have seen a few people say this one is similar to Mink, not identical, but the color and the overall tone is very similar. But this definitely feels a little bit creamier, just has a little bit more of a base pigment to it than the lid lusters do. I guess it kind of depends on the shade, but that's just kind of my impression of the metallic in here. All right, I'll go ahead and swatch Olive on the other hand. So here is Olive. So with this one, we have the matte brown, which the matte brown in Olive is definitely warmer than the Victoria brown. As you can see there, the Victoria one's, I would say, a little more neutral to cool leaning. The Olive one is definitely warmer. And then you have this really pretty olive, like metallic green here, a matte kind of forest green, and then this is like a lighter, almost a little bit of a chartreuse leaning green. Not super chartreuse, but just it's a little bit lighter of a green metallic down here. So these are the swatches. One other difference I was gonna point out here between the new ones and the previous one is the previous ones did not have any dividers within the colors. It's just kind of one solid iBrick. They were called iBricks. The new ones, the colors are divided, as you can see there. I know a lot of people didn't love that about the original ones. So these are separated out as opposed to one solid brick. All right, I just did my brows and I did use my Victoria Beckham products. I didn't film it because I was trying to save a little bit of time, but I did use the Baby Blade pencil and taupe and the, I always forget this, the Feather Fix brow gel in the shade Light Brunette. So those are the two products I used for my brows, and then I applied a little bit of my Sigma eyeshadow base in Ignite on my eyes. So let's go ahead and get started with look number one. I am going to do the eyes first today, obviously, just in case we have any fallout or anything like that. So let's do Victoria first, and I don't really know, to be honest, what I'm going to do here. We'll just see what happens. All right, I'm going to take the brown, so this shade right here, and I'm going to start with a Rephr 01 brush. And I am going to apply this kind of all over. I'm going to start on the lid and then bring it up into the crease as well. I'm going to bring it kind of in the inner corner. I'm kind of applying this all over just as a base. So that color I actually like. It's, I was afraid it might translate a lot warmer on the eyes, but that one is actually, I think, a pretty neutral brown. So I'm happy with this color. I'm gonna add just a little bit more and just kind of go over it again. Honestly, that on its own would be a really pretty like one and done look if that's what you're going for. All right, now I'm gonna go into this shade right here. So this is the plum. It's like a cooler toned plum. And I'm gonna switch to a much smaller brush for this. I'm gonna use a Refer 13. Really tapped off the excess there. And I'm gonna apply this to deepen up the outer corner. I do really like this shade. Okay, so I'm just kind of placing it there. And then I'm gonna go back to that first brush that we used, which was the 01 from Refer, and just kind of buff that out a little bit. Something about this palette is, unless you just used that brown by itself like I had initially, this palette is pretty smoky. Just looking at it, obviously we haven't used all the shades, but it is pretty smoky, so you're not gonna get a super like light everyday look with this color story, I don't think, unless, like I said, you applied the brown just on its own. If you're around my skin tone, if you are deeper, then this might be more of an everyday palette for you. But if you are fair, light, light medium, this is not gonna be a super soft, muted kind of color story. All right, now I'm gonna go into this shade, this kind of gray, like a gray blue color almost. I'm gonna go into this one. I will say I do wish the depth of these two colors was a little bit different because they're about the same level of, you know, tone of color. I wish one was like a little bit lighter than the other just so there was a little bit more variation there, but let's use this gray. And I always struggle to use these little mirrors in here because they're so tiny. I'm gonna use this with a 210 brush from BK Beauty. I really wanted to use my 204 from BK Beauty, but I don't know where it is, so we're gonna have to use this. And I'm gonna kind of apply this on the lash line, like mainly the outer lash line, and then kind of flick it out a little bit like a liner. And then, as always, I like to really like blow things out on the eyes. I don't really love harsh lines anywhere, really on my face at all, but especially on the eyes. I'm gonna go back in with the 13 now, which is what we used for that plum shade, and just kind of go over that as well. All right. We're gonna stop here for the eyes. I'm gonna take a makeup wipe and just kind of lightly clean this side up a little bit because I went a little bit low there. I'm gonna go ahead and I'll do the rest of my face and then I'll be back and show you the finished look. I will, I guess, film it and then I'll just speed through it in case you really want to see. So I will see you once I've done the rest of my makeup. All right, this is the finished makeup. I feel like this took me quite a while to get here, but I do really like how the whole thing came together. This kind of eye look is definitely a trust the process kind of look, especially if you do your eyes first. But I do think it came out beautifully. Is this like an everyday look for me? Definitely not. This is way, 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 way darker and smokier than I typically go. But you know, I do like the end result. I'm not gonna lie. I think it's really pretty. If I was wanting this kind of look, I think this is absolutely stunning. I do think, like I was saying earlier, these two shades, the matte gray and this plum color, definitely you can work with it, but they are not the easiest to use just because they're so deep. And I did have to really kind of work with them to really blend them out and look as seamless as they possibly could. So I would definitely say that about these. This shade is beautiful on its own, so I'm happy to see this in here. I do think this palette could be a little bit more versatile if one of these two shades was just like a little bit lighter, or if the metallic shade was just like a little bit lighter. I feel like it's very deep overall. So if you are a lighter skin tone, unless you just use the brown, it's not going to be a super light, like everyday look. I do feel like that's kind of missing with this collection of palettes, the 4 ones that she launched, because before she did at least have this one, which was the most neutral. And I would say the lightest in terms of what would work for a lighter skin tone. This, because you have these two colors in addition to these two, I felt like this color story is a little bit more versatile. So I do miss that about this signature palette. However, this is beautiful. It's just not going to be an everyday palette for me unless I was just strictly using it for that brown, which is really pretty. But I do like how this came out overall. I used pretty much all my Victoria Beckham products in this video, so anything that I used, if you're curious, the shades and everything will be in the description box for you. But this is look number 1. All right, let's move into look number 2 with the olive palette. So I did the same thing. I just did my brows and I applied the Sigma eye primer again. But let's go into the palette. So I'm going to start with this here, the brown shade, and I'm going to use the Refer 01 again. I did use this earlier, so I really wiped it off well before going in with this palette. I'm going to kind of do the same placement. I'm applying this on the lid and then kind of bringing it up. Going in with a little bit more. So this color is warmer for sure than the brown in the Victoria palette. Still pretty, just a warmer tone than the other brown. The two browns apply really beautifully in the Victoria palette and this palette, so no complaints there. All right, now I'm gonna go into the matte green right here. So this kind of, it's like a forest green. I'm going to use a Refer brush, but this is the Shoto 01. I'm not sure that you can get this anymore. I think it was like a limited edition or part of a limited edition set. But this is like a really small, kind of tapered, pointy brush. It's kind of very unique shape-wise, and I'm gonna apply this in the outer corner here. Kind of wanted to use something like this to give me a little bit more control. See how this one is kind of tapered and pointed on the end, which is nice, especially if you're applying a deeper shade like this. Earlier I used the Refer 13, which is small, but it's just not as, or it's not pointed at all on the end. So just placing that there, going back to the Refer 01 and just blending that out a little. Now I'm gonna go into the kind of olive metallic green right here, and I'm gonna use the Refer 02 that we used earlier for the kind of smokier gray. And I'm gonna start applying this kind of in the center of the lid and over to the outer corner where we applied the other green. Going back in with the Rephr 01 now, just gonna go over the edges again. Now I'm gonna go into the lightest shade, this green, and I think I'm gonna use my finger with this shade. And I'm gonna apply this in the inner part of the lid here, kind of pull it up to meet that brown in the crease. I like that this metallic in here is a little bit on the lighter side, so that kind of gives you a little bit of versatility in terms of how dark of a look you want. I think that makes the palette just a little bit more versatile. I'm gonna switch back to, or this is, actually we haven't used this brush, this is the Rephr 15. I'm gonna go into the brown again, and I'm gonna apply this kind of right here under the brow, just to add some more of that brown, because I feel like we lost some of that with all the greens. All right, I'm gonna stop there on the eyes for right now, and we'll do the same thing. I'll speed through my whole face, and then I'll show you the finished look. All right, this is finished look number 2. I like this one as well. I really, really do. Honestly, it has a very similar vibe to the first look, just because I kind of applied the shadows in the same way, because that's kind of what was obvious to me to do with this palette. And I like it. I mean, I think these shades are really, really beautiful. Again, though, it's kind of same with the Victoria palette. I feel like there's not a ton of versatility. I think this one might be slightly more versatile in terms of the depth of the colors, because you have this metallic shade here that's a little bit, or it's a lot lighter than the other shades. You have like a medium toned, warmer brown. And then I would say these two are about the same in terms of like the depth of the color. One's just more olive and one is more of like a blue green. But I think of the two, I guess maybe you could say a little bit more versatility with this color story in terms of like being able to do a lighter look. But honestly, still gonna be a little bit on the hard side. I mean, you could use just the brown, like we said earlier with Victoria. You do have a lighter shimmer here, so you could always do, you know, the brown all over and take a little bit of the green and kind of tap it on top and keep it a little bit on the lighter side, whereas you can't really do that with the Victoria palette. But I mean, I love the colors. I'm a sucker for green eyeshadow, I gotta say. I think it's beautiful. This is finished look number 2. Okay, so my final kind of overall thoughts on the palettes. I think they're beautiful. I mean, they're very Victoria Beckham. They're very on brand for her, I would say. And I also kind of wonder if the reason for the deeper color stories is because she's kind of known for that. She's kind of known for a smoky eye. All of the palettes, even though I haven't seen the other two in person, just looking at them, I could tell you they're going to be the same way. They're very intense color stories. None of them are, I would describe as a soft, you know, more light everyday type of palette. Unless, you know, you like that on a daily basis. Maybe this is like an everyday palette for you. But for me personally, all of these are a little smoky, a little bit deep for me for an everyday eye look. And that would be kind of my main complaint. Not really a complaint, just an observation. I mean, they're both absolutely beautiful. Just know that if you purchase them and you are, you know, lighter than a medium skin tone, these are going to be pretty intense and smoky. There's not a whole lot you could do that's a lot lighter. Whereas with the original, if you had the signature palette, I think this is a super, obviously very neutral, very basic palette, but it's very versatile because you have a very light pink, you have a really nice kind of light beigey transition shade or highlight shade depending on your skin tone. You have a taupe that is like a medium in terms of the depth, and then you have a darker brown. So I just feel like something like this is more everyday friendly, a little bit more versatile than the new color story. So I do wish she had one that looked like this or was similar to this. Maybe they'll expand, I don't know. But in terms of the quality is very nice. I mean, her eyeshadows, they're not the easiest to work with. I'm mainly talking about the matte eyeshadows. The deeper shades, they're not the easiest mattes I've ever worked with. I think like the Makeup by Mario Master Mattes, the Neutrals palette that I use all the time, those shadows are a little bit more, they're not quite as pigmented right off the bat, and they are more of a buildable formula, which to me is a little bit more user-friendly. These are definitely doable. You can work with them for sure, but just know because most of the colors are on the darker side, you do have to be mindful of that and be willing to work with them a little bit. But the quality is beautiful. I mean, the palettes are nice. They're very expensive, so only you can decide if something like that is worth your money. I think if the color story really speaks to you and you like this brand, I don't think you'll be disappointed, but you have to kind of know what you're getting when you order them. So I hope this video was helpful for you. I do think they're beautiful. This is a brand I really enjoy, so I buy most of the releases because I just love the branding. I love just the whole vibe of Victoria Beckham beauty. And most of the products I think are very good. I do think some are better than others, but they're nice. They're very nice. If this is something that you would use, I do recommend them. So I think that's everything for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Everything that I used for looks 1 and 2 will be in the description box, and it will be linked as well. If you do shop through my links, I do make a commission and it supports me and this channel. So thank you so much if you do that. And if you're new, I would love for you to subscribe and make sure to follow me over on Instagram at simply.blair and TikTok simply.blair1. And I will see you again very soon. Remember, simply be you.